I may live to regret this. The making of this video could truly go so wrong. And I definitely wouldn't recommend doing it as a paid shoot on your own. But hey, here we go. The challenge is to photograph this wedding with one camera and one lens. So let's make a start with the groom prep in the morning and the ceremony. What could possibly go wrong? And now you're probably thinking, dude, this guy is mental. Probably I am, yes. However, to be able to achieve any kind of success with this challenge, first off, I'm gonna have to make sure I choose the right camera to do so. The camera I chose was the trusty Sony a7R Mark V. And the reason I chose this camera is because last year, I got my hands on the Leica Q2 for a little bit. And to be fair, that's where this whole challenge began. I really enjoyed using that camera for two reasons. The first reason, it has just a prime lens and you can't change that lens. And the second reason is that it had more megapixels than any camera I'd ever used in my life. Clearly, I hadn't used that many. And when I used that camera and made the video about that camera, part of me said, this camera isn't right for me because you can't really do much with a single 28mm lens. I sent the camera back, bought the Sony a7R Mark V a few weeks later, and now I'm going to make the counter argument of shooting a whole wedding with just one lens, a prime lens. So why is this camera the right camera for the job? Well, this, when you're using every last pixel on the sensor, will give you a 61 megapixel resolution image. And having 61 megapixels is a huge advantage when you only have one lens available to you. Why is that? Well, obviously I thought that I would be cropping a fair bit, and sure enough, I was. But to be fair, any camera with 48 megapixels or more is a good candidate for this kind of challenge. And luckily with this camera in APS-C mode, so you get a 1.5 times crop, you will still get 26.1 megapixels. And to be fair, I could crop that a little bit more because I know some wedding photographers who shoot on the original Canon R6 and that's only 20 megapixels. So we can kind of stretch the rules that little bit more. Now as for lenses and focal lengths, what will I be able to achieve? As I said at the beginning of the video, most people would use a zoom. However, I wanted to set myself a incredibly hard challenge and just use a single prime. I'll be straight up with you. My original plan was to use a 50mm f1.8 or actually a 55mm f1.8 because that's all I have. However, a 55mm can be fairly tight and I rarely ever touch that lens. I certainly don't feel comfortable shooting on it. Sure, I like a little bit of risk, but come on, give me a break. So I decided to choose my trusty Sony 35mm f1.4 G Master. And with that one single lens, I know that I can shoot around about 70% of a whole wedding with no issues whatsoever. So I knew that I was gonna be okay, mostly. So, ceremony down, how's it going? It's definitely harder to do when you only have one lens. As I say, it's definitely not something which I would ever recommend anyone do. It is interesting to be able to push yourself, try something different, and luckily this venue has really worked for me because it's not a massive venue. There's not loads and loads of space, and you can use the 35mm to get up close and personal with people, and then still crop in to still get them really nice candid photos. Pushing your boundaries, knowing what your limits are, and then pushing them that little bit further, especially with the tools, the technology that we have these days. It's definitely interesting what kind of results you get. And this is where I really struggled with this challenge. However, luckily on the day, I was actually in second shooting helping a mate out. And he said that I had free reign to do whatever I wanted. However, I did try and go into this challenge treating it like I was the principal shooter and covered as much of the wedding as I possibly could with one camera and one lens. The issues really started to become apparent when it got round to me doing the portraits. It's the first time that the couple are together alone after being married, and I like them to just have a nice moment together and almost imagine that I'm not there. That's where the true emotion comes in. The lens I would normally use is an 85mm, but obviously I'm using the opposite end of the spectrum for this video. Luckily, as I say, I've got 61 megapixels to play with, so that 35mm can become a 52.5mm. But even then, with the lens being a 1.4, the bokeh never looks bright. Shooting a wedding on just one lens, the 35mm, when you're so used to using 85, I'm not saying it's impossible, however, getting out of the mindset that you can use the 85mm to snap all them beautiful portraits, that's the money shot lens for me. So it's really hard for me to do. Luckily enough for me, when doing this wedding today, I was just second shooting. I was just helping a mate out, and he said it was okay for me to just shoot on one lens all day long. I've seen many second shooters do that, but as a principal shooter for my own wedding, you would never catch me doing that. Is it possible? Absolutely. Do I suggest it? No. And just to give you an idea, I did use the 85mm, admittedly, just for these few portraits. And that's the thing, depending on what kind of environment you're in, depending on what kind of situation you're in, lenses do different things. However, having something with such a high megapixel does allow you to crop in, but it will never give you the same look as a true 85mm lens or whatever focal length you're trying to crop into. Regardless, say it's been a great experience. Can't blame a guy for trying. And with that, it's time to end the video. And by the way I've edited all of these photos is an entirely new way for me to edit photos. I've done a full video about it, which you can check out right here. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Bye-bye.